Have you ever seen a normally calm person completely lose their shit? What happened? I remember having these two friends in 5th grade, who at the time I didn't think they'd thought of me as their friend. I'd been bullied up to 4th grade, and moved the summer before 5th grade, and everyone called me annoying and at a distance those 4 years. There was this one day where this one kid was being an asshole for no reason, literally just making fun of people, pushing others, and so on. Well, for some reason, he decided that I was worthy of getting punched, so he came from behind me and somehow hit me in the eye. This was at recess, mind you. Well, when I got back to class, these two tall kids, one girl and one guy, saw I had a bruised eye and had been crying. The moment they got the chance, they came over and asked me in a pissed tone, "Who hurt you?" And I remember thinking something like, "Oh shit, I can't let them know who hurt me, they'll kill him." So they kept asking the entire rest of the week until I finally told them. And when I did, I felt extremely guilty. These two kids had asked me for help a few times in class. We talked from time to time, and I sometimes let them have part of my lunch that I didn't want, but they liked. They were the kind of kids to never have been seen getting even slightly annoyed at anyone ever. So when they kept asking me who hurt me, I felt scared for the guy who hit me, and I was right to be afraid. At recess, the day after I told them who hit me, I saw them drag the guy behind some trees which were behind the playground. No one was supposed to go there. And from there on out, I couldn't see what they did. But before recess ended, the kid, with the two kids who kept asking me about him following behind, apologized, and I could tell he had been crying on the way to me. I told him it was fine, and the two kids let him go. After he left, I asked them why they hurt him, and they said, "Because he hurt our friend, and we'll do it again if he tries hitting you again." I did feel like crying after they said that, but held my tears in. For the rest of 5th grade and all of middle school, they hovered around me, and anybody who seemed like they might want to start shit with me got chased away by my two friends. If I could find them again and express my gratitude to them, I would do it 1,000,000 times over. They were the very first people to get angry on my behalf, ever, and stick around with me. One of my teachers in high school was the calmest dude. Never yelled, never told kids off. Would just laugh and smile and wait for us all to calm down and then continue with his teaching. One day, we must have been particularly rowdy, and we weren't calming down like we usually did. He couldn't get a word in edgeways. I could see him getting increasingly frustrated, and eventually, he just bellowed, "Shut up!" And the entire class was shocked into silence. He never had to do it again, and somehow it takes a lot to make my mom yell. On the rare occasion she did yell, it still felt like she had self-control. She yelled on purpose because there was a reason to yell, like she needed to be that loud for us to hear us, or one of the kids needed to learn to never run into traffic again. But one morning when we were teenagers, my brother was being really, really difficult, and my very sweet, soft-spoken mother yelled, "God damn it, Sean!" and threw a butter knife down so hard it stuck 1 4-inch deep in the oak hardwood floor, against the grain. I can still hear the noise it made. We were all very, very well behaved for the rest of the day. I did eventually ask my mom why she did that. Her explanation was that she felt she was too angry to hold a knife, even a butter knife, and was trying to get it out of her hand before she did something stupid. She was clearly right in her assessment of her mental state. I was chilling at a friend's house as a kid. His dad was the chillest, nicest guy. That day, my friend's mom, also super nice, was across the street talking to the neighbor about something that I can no longer recall. The neighbor was one of those guys who never respected common etiquette. Music blaring, parking his shitty boat in front of other people's houses, and cars parked on the lawn. The neighbor started screaming at the mom, and we all went out on the stoop to see what was happening. As soon as we got outside, the guy called my friend's mom a cunt. Well, my friend's dad heard that, and went full Hulk mode. He ran screaming across the street, and just fucking decked the guy, and crouched over him shouting warnings and threats. Took a while for his wife to calm him down. I don't think any of them had ever seen him react to something in that way. Maybe even the dad himself. Warnings and threats after conking him in the face. This is exactly how villains should be, explaining their evil plans. I worked as a line cook with a chef who I became really good friends with. Really chill dude, easygoing and actually super fun to cook with. He taught me most of what I know about cooking, and I owe him a lot for my success. Never really saw him get mad until one day we were getting slammed during a busy night, and one of the servers said something that really ticked him off. Not sure if I ever heard what it was, but the next thing I knew he had sent the deep fryer basket flying at Mach 1 across the kitchen, nearly missing the dish kid and shattering a light bulb. He stormed off and 5 minutes later, after a smoke break, came back and casually continued cooking as if nothing had happened. He apologized about it the next day, and we never talked about it again. The restaurant industry is a stressful place. Oh yeah, when the servers start asking stupid questions, it's very easy to get pissed. There was one particular time when Matt got super glue in his eye while on the line. Trying to continue to control the chaos of the kitchen, he goes into the back and you hear 3 loud bangs up against the side of the building. The dude had a sledgehammer he swung when he had so much pent-up anger. That wall still has all the damage from him 5 years later. When I was in my late teens, I was financially irresponsible and borrowed money from my grandparents to move out of my mom's house. We made a plan on how I would pay it back in installments, and I only missed 2 payments. With each one, I called my granddad and asked if it was okay. He was always cool about it. One day, I got a call from him, and he was livid, screaming at me on the phone, and I could hear my grandmother crying in the background. He was the angriest I've ever heard anyone in my life, and I was terrified. He wanted to know why I hadn't made the payment that month, but I was sure I had. It turns out I had accidentally set the automated payment to be drawn from the wrong account, and it hadn't done it. It was an honest mistake on my part, and I explained that to him. I transferred the money immediately, and he instantly calmed down. I later found out he had become an alcoholic after he quit smoking, and he would talk to my grandmother like that regularly when no one was around. I used to see this woman in my building every day. Very friendly. We always checked on each other's lives. We had lunch a few times over the years. It was friendly to a certain degree. A couple of years passed. She was much older than me. One day, riding the elevator, she told me that she was saying goodbye. I said I was sorry to see her go and asked why. She said she was retiring that day. I asked if her office was throwing a party or if she was celebrating. She turned to me, and her face contorted into an image of rage. She clenched her teeth and said she didn't tell anyone in her office, including her bosses. She only told the HR person last week. This was her last day, and she was never returning to see or talk to anyone in her office again. I had a friend who was in his 60s, a functioning alcoholic, but he was the most calm and composed guy I have ever known. He never used to raise his voice or swear. Everything was done with meticulous precision. He once explained to me that if you use vulgar language and shout all the time, then you will have nowhere to go when you really do get angry. I had worked with him for about 3 years and never heard him raise his voice or swear before. The week before, he had been shafted on his pay, and the manager promised to get it sorted by Friday. Friday rolled around, and it had not been sorted. So when my friend walked up to the manager in the open office and declared loudly, "Where the fuck is my money? You promised this would be resolved." The whole office went silent, and the look of dread on the manager's face was haunting. The money was in his account by the end of the day. That was him losing his shit. Edit. Spelling. This is not my story, but my dad's. Growing up, his best friend Leaf was a quiet, shy guy who was a bit socially awkward. In school, he wasn't physically bullied, but this one kid teased him constantly. This would have been the late 50s or early 60s, so kids were expected to tough it out. My dad would usually confront the kid, but one day a girl runs up to him and says that Leaf and the kid are fighting. My dad runs over to save Leaf, but when he breaks through the circle, he finds the bully flat on his back, Leaf sitting on his chest, holding him by the ears and smashing his head into the pavement over and over. My dad tackles him, wrestles him to the ground, and screams at him, asking what he's doing. The thing that stayed with me from that story was how he described it. It was like there was nothing in there. I felt like I could see the back of his skull through his eyes. Luckily, they were kids, so the damage was serious but limited. The bully escaped with stitches and a concussion, and Leaf had to talk to the school psychologist. My dad and Leif stayed best friends, and when I met him as an adult, he was still quiet but less shy and awkward. Man, my grandma has a similar thing. This boy was a couple of years older than she was, and he was constantly picking on her. He's riding his bike home from school one day, and he rides past her, and he's shouting at her, and she knocks him right off his bike and beats the shit out of him. My sweet little granny. The neighbor that saw it said he was proud as shit that she beat the snot out of this shitty kid lol. I think it was the start of my grandma's bad bitch streak, because not much later, she started street racing. She was allegedly a sweet little girl, but man, I think she must have had a mean streak in her.